The ingredients for this recipe are 16 ounces of full-fat cream cheese, 1/2 cup of full-fat Greek yogurt, 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, 3 tablespoons of Hershey's cocoa, and I like to use the special dark cocoa. It tastes the best. We're going to be using 1 whole egg and 2 egg yolks, 1/2 teaspoon of peppermint extract, a pinch of salt, and for the crust, we're going to be using 10 of these candy cane JoJo sandwich cookies, all crushed up, plus 1 tablespoon of melted butter. The toppings at the end are going to be a ganache drizzle that is made with 1/3 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips and 3 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream, and then we're going to finish off the cheesecake with some crushed candy cane. Now we're not going to use the crushed candy cane until the very end after the chilling of the cheesecake, but since I didn't want to have to wash my blender twice, I decided to go ahead and do it first before I crushed up the JoJo's for the crust. I'm crushing up 10 of these peppermint sandwich cookies, and that'll make about a cup of cookie crumbs, and I'm going to be mixing those with 1 tablespoon of melted butter. For this cheesecake, I'm using a 6-inch round push bottom pan, and in the bottom I have put a parchment paper liner that'll make it really easy to remove from the pan when the cooking is done. To prepare the pan, I am just greasing the sides with a little bit of butter. Now it's time to add the crust mixture. Press it down in the pan firmly and evenly until you have a nice disc of crust on the bottom of your pan. When you have it all pressed down and flat, go ahead and put your pan into the freezer to chill while you make your filling. One of the most important tips to remember when you are making a cheesecake is to get your cream cheese to room temperature before you start mixing up your filling. You should be able to very easily stir it with a spoon. If you cannot easily stir it with a spoon, you can put it in the microwave for 10-second intervals, stirring after each interval until it is very easy to stir. Once you have your cream cheese smooth and lump-free, you can go ahead and add in the Greek yogurt, the peppermint extract, the cocoa, the granulated sugar, and the pinch of salt. Stir until the mixture is smooth and free of any lumps. This is the time to really get it mixed and lump-free. You do not want to mix heavily after you add in the eggs, so right now it's very important to get it as smooth and creamy as possible and get rid of any lumps. Now add in the 2 egg yolks and the 1 whole egg. Add them in one at a time and stir very gently after each addition. Stir just long enough to get the eggs mixed in, but do not beat the mixture. Now grab the crust out of the freezer and go ahead and add your filling to the pan. Get it spread out evenly and tap the pan several times on the counter in order to remove any air bubbles. Cover the pan tightly with foil and this cheesecake is ready to bake. Add 1.5 cups of water to the inner pot. Place the cheesecake onto your handled trivet and lower it down into the inner pot. Lock the lid, make sure that the valve is set to the sealing position, and the cook time for this recipe is 45 minutes at low pressure. This is going to give you a really creamy cheesecake. If you want a denser cheesecake, go ahead and increase the pressure to high. When the cook time is finished, allow the pressure to release naturally for 10 minutes before quick releasing the rest of the pressure and opening up the lid. Allow the cheesecake to sit uncovered on the counter for about 1 hour to cool, and you'll notice that the middle of the cheesecake looks like it's undercooked, but as it sits and cools, it'll continue to cook and the color will become more uniform. After cooling for an hour, cover it again with the foil and transfer it to the fridge for chilling. Chill the cheesecake for at least 8 hours, but you're going to get the best results if you chill for 18 to 24 hours. While the cheesecake is chilling, you can go ahead and get your ganache topping ready. Add 1/3 of a cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips to a little bowl. Add 3 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. And all you're going to do is microwave this for about 30 seconds until the chocolate chips are melted and you're able to stir it until they're smooth. Now I'm going to show you how not to remove a cheesecake from the pan. I got a little bit excited, I guess, and it went flying. Thankfully, it was totally fine and there was no damage. Just try not to do that when you are removing your cheesecake from the pan. I put my ganache topping in a little Ziploc bag and snipped off the corner to try to make some pretty drizzling, but you could just use a spoon or spread it in a single layer over the top. Just before serving, sprinkle the cheesecake with the crushed candy canes. You don't want to do this too far in advance because the candy cane will melt after it's sprinkled onto the cheesecake, so to keep it looking the prettiest, just sprinkle it on right before you serve. For this cheesecake, the ingredients are 1 pound of cream cheese at room temperature, 1/2 cup of whole milk Greek yogurt, 1 whole egg plus 2 egg yolks, 1 tablespoon of instant chai tea powder, 1 cup of crushed ginger snap cookies. Choose gluten-free if you want the whole cheesecake to be gluten-free, 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, a pinch of salt, and some butter for the crust as well as for greasing the pan. I'm using a 7-inch push-bottom pan with a parchment paper liner in the bottom, and I'm greasing the sides with a little bit of butter. For the crust, melt 2 tablespoons of butter in a bowl and add in the 1 cup of ginger snap crumbs. Get that all mixed up until it is lump-free. Go ahead and pour that into your prepared pan and get it pressed down evenly and firmly across the bottom. Place the pan into the freezer while you mix up the filling. Now onto the filling. Let's start with 1 pound of full-fat cream cheese, and it should be at room temperature and very easy to stir. If it is not easy to stir yet, place it in the microwave for 10-second intervals, stirring after each interval until it is very smooth and easy to stir with a spoon. Now add in the Greek yogurt, the granulated sugar, the pinch of salt, and the chai powder. Get that all stirred up until it is very smooth. I like to transfer over to a spatula after things start to get mixed. Now it's time to add the 2 egg yolks and the whole egg. Add them one at a time, carefully mixing after each one. At this point, you don't want to overmix or you could ruin your cheesecake. Once you've gently mixed in all of your eggs, grab the pan out of the freezer and get the filling poured over the crust. Spread the filling out evenly and then tap the pan onto the counter several times to release any air bubbles. Cover the pan tightly with foil and place onto your trivet. Add 1.5 to 2 cups of water to your inner pot and lower the cheesecake down in. Lock the lid and make sure the steam release valve is set to the sealing position. The cook time for this cheesecake is 40 minutes at low pressure. This will give you a really creamy cheesecake texture. If you want a denser cheesecake, go ahead and increase the pressure level to high. After cook time is finished, allow the pressure to release naturally for 10 minutes before quickly releasing the rest of the pressure. Remove the cheesecake from the inner pot and allow it to cool uncovered on the counter for about an hour. At this point, it'll look like the center is not quite cooked, but as it sits on the counter, it will continue to cook and the color will become more uniform. After an hour of cooling, cover again with the foil and place it in the fridge for at least 8 hours, but you're going to get the best texture if you let it chill for 18 to 24 hours. After chilling is finished, you can remove the cheesecake from the pan, and this cheesecake pulled away from the sides of the pan just beautifully, so the sides ended up looking really gorgeous. One more optional step to this cheesecake is adding a sour cream layer. You can mix 1/2 cup of sour cream with about a tablespoon of granulated sugar. Just whisk that up until it's smooth and spread it over the top of the cheesecake. Then you could give it a little sprinkle of cinnamon just to add that little extra garnish on top. But this cheesecake is ready to serve as is, and it is absolutely delicious. For this recipe, the ingredients I'm going to be using are almond flour for the crust with a little bit of brown sugar and some butter. Then for the cake part, we'll be using 1 pound of full-fat cream cheese, half a cup of whole milk Greek yogurt, half a cup of sugar, 1 whole egg and 2 egg yolks, about a teaspoon each of the zest off of an orange and of a lemon. And then to make this a cranberry cheesecake, I have a cranberry sauce, and this is my homemade recipe that I will link in the cards as well in the description below. But you can use any cranberry sauce you happen to have. This recipe is a great way to use up cranberry sauce if you have it left over from the holidays. And the last ingredient is just a pinch of salt. We'll start with the crust. Add 2 tablespoons of butter to a bowl and go ahead and melt that. Then add 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and 2/3 of a cup of almond flour. Mix that up, making sure you get rid of all of the lumps in the almond flour until everything is nice and mixed. I have a parchment paper round in my 7-inch push bottom pan, and I am going to just butter the edges of the pan so that the cheesecake will be easy to remove. Now add in your crust ingredients to the bottom of the pan and get those pressed down firmly and evenly along the bottom. Place the crust into the freezer while you work on the filling. For the filling, first thing, add 1 pound of cream cheese to your bowl, and you want to make sure that the cream cheese is room temperature and very easy to mix with a spoon. My cream cheese here is not quite to the right temperature, so what I'm going to do is put it in the microwave on 10-second intervals, stirring after each interval until it is very smooth and easy to mix. Now add in 1/2 cup of Greek yogurt, 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, the zest of about half of a large lemon. I didn't measure the zest, but it ended up that I zested about half of the lemon, and it was a pretty large one. Also zest half of a medium to large orange. I got so busy with my zesting that I forgot to add a pinch of salt, but you can add that at this point. Get that all mixed up until it is smooth and lump free, and I like to transfer over to a spatula at some point during the mixing. It just makes it easier. Now it's time to add the 2 egg yolks and the 1 whole egg. Add them one at a time and mix gently after each addition. At this point, you definitely don't want to overmix your batter. Now we're going to add 1/4 of a cup of the cranberry sauce, and we're not going to fully mix this in since we want it to be a cranberry swirl cheesecake. We're just going to very gently mix it in until it's nice and swirled. Now it's time to add the batter to the pan. Just make sure it's spread out evenly and a little bit smooth over the top. Tap the pan on the counter several times to release any air bubbles. Now take 2 tablespoons of the cranberry sauce and gently just spread it over the top. This is going to add a really nice swirl to the top, and it's just going to make it look really pretty. Now using a butter knife, just swirl the top of the cheesecake to get the cranberry sauce a little bit mixed in. There's no right or wrong here, just keep on going until it looks the way you want it. Cover the pan tightly with foil. Add 1.5 cups of water to the liner of your Instant Pot. And for this recipe, I am going to be using this silicone sling, but you could use the trivet that comes with the Instant Pot along with a foil sling if you want to have help getting it in and out of the Instant Pot. But this silicone sling just makes it a little bit easier. Lock the lid and make sure the valve is set to the sealing position. The cook time for this cheesecake is 40 minutes at low pressure. This will give you a really creamy cheesecake that's almost a mousse-like texture, but if you want a denser cheesecake, you can increase the pressure level to high. When the cook time is finished, let the pressure release naturally for 10 minutes and then quick release any remaining pressure. After carefully removing the cheesecake from the inner pot, go ahead and uncover it and allow it to cool on the counter for about an hour. After an hour of cooling, cover it again with the foil and transfer it to the fridge to chill. You want it to chill for at least 8 hours, but you're going to get the best texture and result if you let it chill for 18 to 24 hours. After the cheesecake is fully chilled, you can remove it from the pan and transfer it to a serving plate, and this cheesecake is ready to go. One tip for transferring cheesecakes to parties or gatherings is to use a plastic or glass bowl that is about the size of the plate that the cheesecake is on. Set the plate onto the lid of the container and then put the container right over top, and it makes a perfect cheesecake carrier.